Okay, what we're going to do now, I'm going to throw out some ideas concerning the Reconstruction. Uh, the lecture went a little bit longer than I was intending because I tried to jam in too much, and I'm going to fix that as we go on to the future. But let's talk a little bit about Reconstruction and some of the controversies that surrounded that era. You have a lot of people, historians, uh, and one quick thing about historians. If you took 15 historians and lined them up end to end, they would all point in a different direction concerning, almost every major event and an interpretation of it. So, that's to me one of the beauties of history, that there's a lot of different ways to look at things, and those different ways are influenced by what we go through now. For example, in the coming weeks, we're going to take a look at the settlement of the West, and we'll talk about George Armstrong Custer and Custer's last stand. And you'll see there are so many different interpretations, particularly on a film level. There's over 70 some films made about Custer's last stand, and each one portrays him a little bit differently, and it does reflect the times in which it was made. So the same thing with Reconstruction. Now, was it a success? Did it do what it was supposed to do? Did it rebuild the South? Well, again, how do you want to look at it? Did it bring them back into the Union? Yes. Did it refurbish its burnt over land, its destroyed cities? It took time. Did the South diversify its economy? Somewhat. And did they eventually accept being in the Union on the terms that were presented? Well, now there's a discussion that could run a long, long time. Now, from a different aspect, was it successful in terms of how the newly freed slaves were going to be integrated, if you will, into American society? Well, again, were they made citizens? Yes. Were there 3 amendments that dealt specifically with them and the problems that they faced? Yeah. Were those enforced? Well, now that's a different question. And if you take it in context of what's happening today with the defunding police movement and the various protests and demonstrations that are being held all over the country after George Thomas, you would get a lot of people who would argue that Reconstruction never fulfilled its promise. And that's a legitimate argument. But by the same token, it did set the table. By the same token, it did get people discussing the very thing which had been ignored and have that can kicked down the road by generation after generation from the time of the Declaration of Independence until current day. So again, there's a lot of different ways. One of the constant criticisms of the Reconstruction era is the corruption that existed. I briefly touched upon that with Grant's administration. I'll get a little bit deeper into it when we start talking about the rise of big business. But to suffice it to say that many of Grant's cabinet members were corrupt. They were stealing money left and right. One of them, Secretary of Treasury Belknap, went to prison precisely for, and he's the first cabinet member, by the way, that was ever imprisoned for robbing the public blind. Pick up a newspaper today. Any different? You just had Steve Bannon, one of Trump's major advisors until about a year ago, accused, not convicted, accused of stealing money from a $25 million fund that they privately raised to build the wall. You know, the wall, the one that Mexico was going to pay everything for. So, again, it perhaps is an unfair criticism of the Grant era and of, the Reconstruction period as a whole. Some of it is used by Southerners to discredit many of the Black administrations that participated in running the new state governments, whether they were Black administrators, Black governors, Black members of the legislative bodies, whether it be on a state or national level, or in some cases, even on a local level. So were there problems there? Yeah, in some instances there were. Were some of the administrations corrupt? Not in terms of the individuals, and we're talking about now the freedmen, right? But some of the people who advised them and attempted to use them. I mean, quite frankly, some of the people that got involved in administration were in over their head early on. Others were excellent. And interestingly enough, a lot of the things that were being pushed in the South were not being lived up to in the North. So Reconstruction and this whole idea of political, social, and economic equality was aimed at the South. You still had segregation in the North. You still had rights being denied, though not as heavily, and obviously the amount of violence was less. However, violence did occur in the North. There would be riots in cities. The New York City draft riot right after Gettysburg in 1863 was immense, and it took an entire corps of the United States Army to go up there and put it down. Numerous Blacks were killed. A Black orphanage was burned to the ground. So again, that's in a northern city. There was no more southern city than Philadelphia, and some of the things that went on there. We'll talk about that later. But you have a statue in Philadelphia, Cato's statue. Here was a man that pushed for equality and eventually would be assassinated, if you will, by whites in the city of Philadelphia. So again, all this era is open to interpretation, and again, there's nothing wrong with interpreting as long as you have solid information to back it up. So I just wanted to throw those ideas out there. Again, feel free to respond. And as I said to you earlier, I will be posting when I'm going to have quote unquote office hours over the conference segment of the Canvas, and then we can talk. It won't be face to face, but at least we'll be able to talk. Again, any questions? Don't hesitate to email me, and I hope everybody is doing well.